asked for a bit of a price drop on the Toyota Corolla,
A
and so
bit.
a
First
bit.
mistake.
I know. There you go. Well, I'm trying to learn in this
Good.
podcast. That's what it's for. So, uh, conflict is inevitable. Many of us struggle with it, including me. It'd be great if we could confidently deal with conflict and negotiate to get what we want. But unfortunately, a lot of us feel like we get taken advantage of and feel stressed out in those conflict situations. So here I am today with Nellie Vieira, and I want to talk all about negotiating, and because I really think that it definitely is possible for you to get better at negotiating. So Nellie, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your experience with negotiating?
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you first of all, Ollie, for having me here, and I appreciate first of all your interest and passion in the whole negotiation subject. Well, I am a founder and business owner for True to the Core. And I wanted to start with that one because when you're thinking about negotiation, conflict resolution, communication, relationship development, True to the Core is the philosophy and just the basis of what I believe we have to be able to do and be
Mm-hmm.
in order to get our message across. So when it comes to negotiating, that's the area where more often than not people are not true to their core.
Mm.
They're more likely to move into being something that they believe they should be or saying things that they should say, as opposed to really developing that rapport or authenticity that establishes the win win that's necessary. So I deal with people in consulting and coaching on helping you say what you need to say to
Mm-hmm.
get what you want and to
Yeah.
feel good about it. That's all
Yeah,
there
I
is to
really
it.
love that the sound of the true to the core messaging, and I definitely want you to elaborate on what that really means and how people can be more true to their core. But I'm also curious, like you said, you do coaching and training. Um, what do you find people are really looking for? Like what really motivates them when they come to do your coaching and their training, besides the surface level negotiating? Like what are they really coming to get when they want to get negotiating training?
They want to overcome, is usually what it is. Overcome the fear of failure or losing. They want to avoid resentment or regret,
Right.
especially. So people always feel that they need to second guess a lot. So it's about feeling confident within a conversation. It's about feeling that they need to process exactly knowing what they want so that they're focused in
Mm-hmm.
that conversation. But it's a fearful thing. I mean, as soon as you mention the word negotiation, people get weird.
Yeah. And so what is it about the word negotiation, or like what to you is the meaning of negotiation? Because it's actually funny enough, I before this podcast I was talking to some family about negotiating, and a lot of people assume that they don't necessarily need to learn negotiating, but when I ask them if they want to learn about conflict resolution, they say, "Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. I
yeah.
definitely need that." But there's something about the negotiating where people assume, "Well, I'm not buying a car. I'm not in a hostage situation. I don't need negotiating." Well, why do you think that is, and what to you is like a good definition of negotiation?
Well, there's many definitions. The thing that I most appreciate about why people get irky during the word negotiation is that it indicates a formality,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people see it as competitive, and that it's about the win lose, right? So the
Yeah.
minute you say negotiate, all of a
Yeah.
sudden, this whole across the table thing starts to become the image that they have.
Right. Yeah, it's like you
My
versus me. There's gonna be
exactly.
a winner. There's no like we're
Exactly.
gonna sort this out in a win-win.
And I've got to be better than you.
Mm-hmm.
So, negotiation, even, I often actually tell people just avoid the word. We're not even having a negotiation. We're having a conversation to get to a resolution about something that'll work for you and it'll work for me at the same time. That's basically what it is. So, a lot of times, at the beginning of trainings and all that sort of stuff, of course, everybody wants a definition. Uh, but the simplest definition, actually, if you really, really are able to conceptualize it this way, it really helps. It's where you think about that people are actually in a process. They get into this conversation that becomes a process
Mm-hmm.
of trying to move one another. And by
Right.
moving one another, it's like, okay, you're willing to give a little, I'm willing to give a little. Okay, I'm willing to tell you this, you're willing to hear this. And moving one another towards a joint workable solution.
Right.
It
Okay.
starts with a need.
Yeah.
You don't have a negotiation unless somebody needs out of the other.
Right.
That's all
And
there
yeah,
is.
unless you're wanting to get something. And like you
Right.
said, it can be for a lot of people very tense situations and where you leave where you feel like regret or resentment that it didn't go well. And so people have a lot of these frustrations. What would you say are some of the common problems or mistakes that people are having when they come to you and they're looking for negotiation training? Like what are they, what are the people who've never really trained in negotiation and haven't learned too much? What are they missing out on? Is it like a mentality thing? Is it just a combination of things?
It is, for the most part, we're all capable of it from a technical and you know your business. So you know if you're going into a negotiation or you know you're going to buy something or you know you're going to talk to somebody about something. You're very clear on what it is that you are trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
What ends up happening is that we start falsifying or not being authentic with how it is that we're going about it. We're second guessing the things that we need to say.
Mm-hmm.
The confidence, which means the fear of I'm going to say something wrong or I'm going to
Right.
tell you too much. Or so everybody seems to know how to bargain, and this is
Mm-hmm.
what we think negotiation is. It's where I go, okay, okay. I'll give you $10 for that. No, 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 no. I get that's not a negotiation. That's a
Right.
bartering, back and forth sort of thing. And that usually ends up in a compromise. But
Yeah.
what people don't see as a negotiation is all the developmental parts, the ability for me to build enough a rapport with you, and not by getting to know you or your kids or any of that stuff. This is,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not the sales schmooze.
No.
Whether I know you or don't know you, it's about me being able to speak to you very genuinely about what it is that I value in this,
Right.
so that you'll tell me what you value in this from a reality perspective. The
Right.
more
Right.
we actually are open and integral with one another, the more likely we get to a solution pretty fast. It's
Yeah.
all the games that people think they need to play when it comes
Right.
to negotiating.
That definitely seems to limit it a lot of the time. Like I was recently actually at a car dealership and I was trying to get like I was looking into a new Toyota. I ended up backing out, but yeah, the car salesman they come at you with this. It seems like a lot of like flattering. Like the guy was complimenting. He was like, I said my name. He's like, "What's your name?" And I'm like, "Oliver." And he's like, "Wow, that's such a beautiful name." And I'm like, "Okay." I don't know. It's just yeah. It seems like fake. It's like, does this guy really like
Right.
my name? I don't know. Does he like? So he's saying all these things that seem like a front, and it throws me off as a
Right.
buyer. I'm like, this guy seems like he's trying to pull my strings, but it's so surface level. It's like the easiest things to poke at. It's compliments, it's flattery, it's things like that. How would you say people can be more authentic if they, even if let's say they work at a car dealership and they've been instructed to do that type of thing I'm describing, but now they are listening to us and they're thinking, okay, well maybe I need to alter my approach. I want to be more true to the core, let's say.
Oh, that's cool. Thanks for that. Um, it's two-sided because you're dead on. Probably from a selling perspective or a sales person point of view, they're encouraged to try to build rapport, but
Mhm.
nobody actually exercises or teaches you how to build rapport. It
Mhm.
isn't, and the more they are able to say, maybe the guy really did love your name. Okay, that
Yeah,
that
could
could be
be,
true.
yeah.
But then from the equal and opposite, from your position, when somebody does something like that, in order to test whether it is real or not, we start doing something called testing assumptions.
Mhm.
And all that means is, okay, is it true that this guy likes my name or is this just one of the ploys? So then what you do is you keep asking other questions or you keep communicating, and it's called testing the assumption that he's ingenuine or testing the assumption that he actually is genuine. So
Right.
you're trying to get that read, but it's up to you to sort of be first of all, yourself as genuine as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But then, secondly, asking those kinds of questions that then make you feel comfortable and make them feel comfortable.
Right.
Everybody's going to do the tactical sort of salesperson thing. And it's really unfortunate, even the fact that you mention it in this
Yeah.
day and age, that it still happens that way. I almost find it embarrassing because it's a lead into, oh boy, I'm gonna get ripped off here. This is so typical, and that's the sad part.
Yeah. That to me is a lot of the time the worst part about those sales tactics. The thing that push you away the most is when you see through what they're trying to do. Like for example, the same thing with the car dealership. The guy I asked for a bit of a price drop on the Toyota Corolla,
A
and so
bit,
a
first
bit.
mistake.
Yeah, I know. There you go. Well, I'm trying to learn in this
Good.
podcast. That's what it's for. So, uh, but yeah, so I asked for a bit. I should ask for a little bit more. But anyway, he goes back to talk to his manager, and he comes back, and he doesn't drop it down as much as what I had requested, but there's a huge smile on his face. He's like, "Look what I can do for you. Like we're gonna make this happen." As if it's like it's like Christmas or it's my birthday. It's like, here you go. We're gonna be able to do this. But I was like, I feel like this is such a typical thing that all they do every time is you ask for 1,000 off, they give you 200 off, and they act like it's the biggest celebration ever.
It's true.
But you kind of see through it, and it doesn't feel too great.
I I was just going to say, I think that's why, and remember that now you're able to actually get a lot more information about really what goes on behind the scenes in there. Meaning that just virtually you can look up manufacturer cost, you can look up, comparative pricing, you can look up what the last price that was paid at that dealership for that particular vehicle.
Hmm.
All of that oftentimes becomes ammunition for you now.
Right.
So the negotiation part, if you really think about it, it's not that you don't have the numbers, it's not that you don't have the information, it's not that you might not be able to just, on an email demand what it is that you want. It's when you're now involved in that process with another person, it becomes completely uncomfortable. It's either a big show or it's some sort of, tug of war. But very rarely is it one of these things that, okay, let's just be straight. What's the bottom line in terms of what I could? Nobody's going to ever give you a bottom line.
Hmm.
That's why negotiation is necessary because we
Right.
don't trust that you're saying it's a bottom line.
Yeah, and like you said, you can get some information online. You can look up the dollar values, like the all that stuff of what the cars advertise for. But and that information is great, but there's definitely way more information that's hidden, that's not on the websites, it's not on any pamphlets, and like you were saying, you're trying to find out this information, so you need to ask questions. What are some good questions just in general for it might vary from specific scenario to scenario, but let's say, yeah, we'll stick with the car dealership scenario. Like, what would be some good questions to
You want
ask?
I can almost, sort of round that up for you in terms of um, the types of questions that you want to ask are not the ones just to get more information. The types of questions that you want to ask are ones that then allow the other side to actually feel that you're worth it.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I think the thing that people oftentimes forget, it's one thing if you can actually prove all your information to be true and stand factually on something with someone and then say, therefore, this is what you should be giving it to me for.
Right.
The bottom line reality is they still have the choice.
Yeah.
It's all about what they choose and are willing to do. So
Right.
your job as being the other side and the one that wants is to actually encourage and motivate that person to want to do for you what they might not do for anybody else. This
Right.
isn't about what the right price is.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is about what are they willing to do for you. So
Right.
that's where you come in. How do
Mm-hmm.
you handle them? How do
Right.
you treat them differently than anybody else treats, a car dealership, a salesperson? So right away, we've got, even think in your mind, all the assumptions you're already making. The typical rip-off artist, the guy's going to be, able to come up with all the lines, blah, blah, blah. And now, if you go in and you handle this individual and the way in which you're talking to them in a different way, and one that kind of says, listen, I bet you get a lot of the, typical customers that come in here that just want to fight you to the wall sort of thing. I want to just have a conversation with you that says, I'm somebody buying a car. You've obviously had to do it for yourself as well. Can we just like get down to brass tacks and enjoy the process of what it is that we're going to be doing here? I know that sounds lame to a lot of people where they say, oh, come on, you're getting really soft with it. On the contrary, what ends up happening is people are going, oh my God, this person is making an effort that nobody else makes. This person actually sees me as a
Yeah.
human being as
Right. Yeah.
opposed to, and that's where it starts.
For sure. Yeah. I definitely would think that a lot of people approach those car salesmen and a lot of negotiations as this person's a barrier. Like I want to get through them.
Exactly.
They're a challenging obstacle, and they're throwing things at me that seem like flattery and deception and all of this. But yeah, I could see how that would be way more beneficial of an approach where you actually connect with this person and you build a little bit of rapport quickly. Um, and so, would you say that those are some main components for negotiating? Is you want to build rapport with the individual or party that you're communicating with. You want to get the information, whether it's you do your research beforehand or you try to get the information through them. And it's a combination of those two things. And maybe you want to throw in, like, in the word persuasion. Like, is there a bit of a three pillar thing that we can use for negotiation here? It's like uh,
Three pillar, interesting. Okay.
three, or maybe there's four,
I
whatever you
don't
mean.
know.
I
I
just
don't
mean,
know. Go for it.
yeah. Would you agree with that though, where you're essentially trying to get all the information that's out there? Because I walk up and I start negotiating with somebody, and I don't know what they know. I don't know what motivates them. I don't know what they're interested in, and so I want to know all this information if I'm really going to be try to be persuasive with this person. I can't be persuasive with them if I don't know what their motivations are and I don't know the behind the scenes things. So you need to ask those questions to get that information, but then also be genuinely trying to connect with them and build that rapport so you don't come off as a sleazy salesman and it's like a genuine
Yeah.
persuasion thing. It's not
Well,
a manipulative thing.
think about it though. If even just in terms of, let's say, you and I having a conversation, um, are you likely to be open and willing if you looked at me and the way that I'm talking to you is attitudinal or one-sided or completely demanding? There's less interest for you to even get involved. Like
Hmm.
you'll do your job, you'll do your job. Just think about what you do on a day-to-day basis. That's a negotiation in itself. Do I make more effort in this particular area or do I just do what I need to do?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. A negotiation isn't about you just being able to prove that someone else should do for you what you're asking for them, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
A negotiation has a lot of intention behind it that is based on trust. And I know that people think, oh, don't waste your time trying to build a relationship. Relationships have all kinds of different definitions. I can have a relationship with somebody that's only 10 minutes long. It could be someone that I'm just in a grocery store with, but it has to do with how they've served me or what it is that I needed from them or the way in which I had an exceptional need from them. And how I manage that will make a big difference to the next person that walks in and believes they have a right to it, or that you are simply the service person that is supposed to be responding to my need. So that whole mindset part that you were talking about, that's number one. That it really is about how you set yourself up. And I have a little philosophy about the three ingredients of you need to trust, understand, and then communicate. And I know that sounds as though, but wait a minute, aren't you communicating through the whole thing to say that? Yeah. But in order to actually ask for what you want or be able to persuade the other person, which is really about motivating, when you persuade someone, that's that moving part again. Now I
Hmm.
understand what you value. Now I understand what's important to you. Until then, I can't move you with just saying, oh, you know what? Well, I'm willing to do this for you. And you go, okay, thanks a lot. But that didn't make a difference. It was
Mm-hmm.
just something I just gave away right now that you're willing to take, but it didn't change the scenario
Right.
because it was just easy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many things that go with that, but to be able to develop the kind of, so those would be my pillars if I was going to say it,
Yeah. Yeah.
is just the we spend too much time in the talking, in believing that we're going to get our message across,
Right.
when really it's about really listening to how the other person responds to your questions. You know what's interesting about you even bringing up the car salesman
Mm-hmm.
is that both my husband and I just recently purchased our cars that we had leased for quite well, for the typical time that you're supposed to lease, I guess 2 or 3 years, whatever it was. And why I'm even bringing this up to you is because, everybody draws on the car dealership thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, there it is that I was just sitting here thinking to myself, that's a true life experience that we've just had that I almost take lightly, because we did build the rapport with him. Because the guy jumped through hoops in order for us to be able to do exactly what we are financed with from a lease point of view into how we're actually going to own the car. Because had we stayed with a lease, it would have been double the price. And the reality is that that wasn't even in his control. That's just the way that the market has moved in terms of everything that's been happening from a supply and demand point of view. So,
Mm-hmm.
sure, we could have, bargained and gone to get another vehicle, or would have changed the financing completely. He was able to do it for us
Mm-hmm.
in a way that was not typical.
And how
And
did you get him to be able to do that? Or he essentially just offered because the
no,
rapport
it
was
wasn't.
there?
It was there. The
Yeah.
rapport was there, and it was because of when we first initially ever even, invited ourselves into the potential of owning those vehicles. I'm sorry, of leasing those even in the first place. The way he went about it, and his, if you want to talk persuasion, he tapped onto my husband pretty amazingly,
Oh yeah.
because oh yeah, I mean, men have more of an affiliation oftentimes with the sort of the car and all the rest of it
Yeah.
than women do. And I'm not saying that women don't. We do have, car enthusiasts, but I'm one of these people, I just need to drive, like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
okay with whatever. But for him it was important. And I've got to tell you that this guy didn't do the schmooze. He
Mm-hmm.
was so good at just kind of asking Steve what it was he, needed to feel, and what was
Mm-hmm.
important to him, and the way he, and it was, I watched this whole process take its course. But that was what actually then led to the honesty and the exchange, and him telling us about his own I mean, we know so much about this guy
Yeah.
now. It's unbelievable. It's like we're best friends. But
Wow.
it's not like we have a social existence with them. That's what I mean about people get so concerned about, I don't want to have a relationship with this person because then maybe they'll, even in a workplace, corporately, we have such fear from a buyer seller interface that we don't want buyers to get too comfortable with who their suppliers are, or who the people are that are, you know, coming in and having to set up contracts or
Yeah.
sell to them.
Do you find people get worried about exposing too much of their own information because they feel like that they're going to get taken advantage of?
Exactly.
Like if they tell the car salesman exactly what they want, exactly what their finances are, then if the car salesman didn't have great intentions, he might be able to pin you in a corner. He's like, I know everything, and so you're gonna have to go with this option.
There's part of that.
Um, yeah, and that definitely makes it an easier sell when somebody comes through a car dealership and they do know what they want. I'm kind of like you, where I'm not a huge car guy, so I don't really have very many specifics. And last time when I was talking to the Toyota person, they were asking me those questions. They're like, "What are your must-haves?" And I was like, "Honestly, I just need like a basic car just to get from A to B." And so he's like, "Okay, well, what kind of color?" I'm like, "I'm not that picky." So it it makes it tricky.
It
Yeah,
does.
but yeah, the rapport thing definitely is massive, and I feel like a lot of people who are listening could relate to that, whether it's in a negotiation or just when there's somebody that you really, really know and you've known them forever, things just happen way easier. You don't need to
Why is that?
discuss. Yeah, it's because that
It's
rapport is already built and
trust.
the trust is there.
Right.
Yeah, so how would you say though, like if you want to build that rapport quickly, like let's say you step in, you don't know this person and you don't want to be there for a whole day. You want to talk to them for 30 minutes and hopefully be able to make a good deal. Like what are some recommendations you'd have for trying to build that trust in a shorter time period?
I'd say the first thing is to actually assume a positive intent.
Mhm.
And I know that that sounds simple, and yet, remember when we were saying about the mindset part, the reality is when we go into a negotiation, we have negative. We believe that there's a negative intent on the other side.
Right, yeah.
They're gonna get me, right?
Right.
So we put up our guard and start doing all the defensive stuff. So if what you do is almost imagine this person as someone that you in fact have a rapport with, even though you're just building it.
Mhm.
At least where you go in your communication and the way in which you attitudinally, step into it is much more trusting. And so now I'm talking to you in a way that is more formulated in assuming without really knowing.
Right.
So in my buying days, back in purchasing management world of my life, um, even when I know or knew that you have the advantage, meaning you're a single source supplier or you're a monopolizer or and I have no control over that. I
Mhm.
have no control. But what I do have control over is being able to be that individual that regardless of what you do to everybody else that you might not want to do it to me,
Right.
that I give you cause for doing better. And so,
Mm.
how do you do that unless I treat you well? So,
Right.
I might be able to say things to you that, listen, I know that you're the only player in the game, and that literally, if you wanted to, you could be ripping us off to high heaven. And I'm going to trust that you are acting in the exact same way as you would if you had all the competition in the world,
Mhm.
because I want to deal with somebody like that. Now, you see, I'm putting myself out there, like literally risking saying something like that, that might, he could be sitting there saying, I'm counting the money, baby. I'm not
Yeah.
caring about any of that. But by me actually genuinely saying to you, what else have I got? I've
Yeah.
got to be able to trust you. And I'm just assuming that I'm
Right.
not giving you a hard enough time or making it difficult enough for you that you're willing to do for me.
Yeah.
And it's always worked.
And that must be a huge relief for a lot of salespeople because I feel like a lot of people approach them and they kind of are with that. They have their skeptical hat on. They're kind of like trying to see through them, and they're not even really considering this person as a person. They're just trying to do their job and they're trying to make some sales. Um, but again, you definitely don't want to be like naive in assuming that everybody has your best intentions. But I really love what you're saying about trying to build that rapport in a short term, long term, because I feel like that's when the best deals end up occurring. Like for that car salesman that you said really connected with your husband. I bet now you guys can call him at any time, and like if you need a new
Totally.
car, it's like he's your
Totally.
guy. He's got your business. You really trust him, and it makes things way smoother. You probably save time, save
Oh,
energy,
there's been all
everything,
kinds of things
money.
already, Ollie, that made up for. Like, I mean, it's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
You just mentioned a good point, though, too, that I was just thinking. See, we're talking about like buy or sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about having options. We're talking about, but there's all kinds of different negotiations where you don't even get the person to person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
a lot of people try to do negotiating over email
Yeah,
or,
like let's say Kijiji, or like let's say you're working with
yeah,
Facebook Marketplace, because that's a big thing. Everybody's trying to buy and sell their
there you
products,
go.
but you don't have that face to face. And I'd be curious to hear like how you see uh, the influence face to face can have versus just text, and how important like the tone and the body language
Yeah.
is.
It's funny because everybody, we hide now.
Yeah.
Connectivity is a weird sort of thing when it comes to texting and email and all that sort of thing. We can create the wonderful formality over an email if you wanted to, that really you wouldn't be able to say person to person.
Mm-hmm.
And we can also have the real curtain close as though we're best buddies on text.
Yeah.
But you probably wouldn't talk to them like that person to person. So all
Right.
of those things are very, very interesting. But when you're talking about like Facebook and you're doing the marketplace thing and whatever. That is literally pure bargaining back and
Pure
forth.
bargain. Yeah.
That's pure barter because unless it's where I'm saying, oh, so suppose I gave you my sympathetic story, or
Yeah.
I use emotion, which is a real powerful element. So in the use of emotion, I say to you, I really want this dresser set for my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately, it's not something that I really can afford. Do you have any? You know, she's really wanting it, and so you carry on with this. Can you feel sorry for me?
Mm-hmm.
Can you possibly, do you feel anything here that might move you? That's why it's all related to moving. Can I
Yeah.
move you? But if you're somebody that's going, screw that, I'm just selling a dress for God's sake, I don't care who
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
going to, right?
Yeah.
It might not move you at all, but it might move someone.
Right.
And that's why the strategy is always about the use of emotion first
Mm-hmm.
before logic.
Yeah. And
So,
it's
whereas most people would come in going, that dresser's not worth more than $50, whatever, right?
right.
So, that's the logic stuff. Don't go there first. Don't
Yeah.
go there first.
Well, it's so hard to build trust online because I mean, you have like dozens of people messaging you for your dresser, and it's like I don't know who's really telling me a true story.